Hey guys, it's Kat and I'm back today with base, brows and no eyeshadow, which can only mean one thing. I'm testing out a new eyeshadow palette. So what I do in this series is I take an eyeshadow palette that I've never used before, I swatch it, I describe it, I talk about it, I apply it for the first time, let you know what I'm thinking as I go, and then what I'll do is I'll check in over a period of anywhere from 4 to 7 days as I use this eyeshadow palette and every single shade. I show you the looks I create and then I conclude what I think about the eyeshadow palette after I've used it for that length of time. Now, I haven't done this for a while because back in May and early June, I think I did too many eyeshadow palette reviews. I think I did about 7 eyeshadow palette reviews. I got really tired of eyeshadows and I've got a few fun, colorful eyeshadow palettes that I want to review really soon, but I kept coming back to something that's a little bit more basic and a little bit more easy to wear because that's what I'm sort of enjoying right now. So hopefully this will build into more color very, very soon. But what I'm reviewing today is this. So this is the Lunar Beauty Greek Goddess palette. Now, I've never tried anything from Lunar Beauty, which is Manny MUA's brand, and this is the first on the chopping block. I will also be trying a couple of other things in this video, just first impressions, but I will mainly be focusing on this palette today. So after I do my eyes, I will apply one of the highlighters and I'll swatch them. I've got 2, and also I've got a liquid lipstick that I haven't used before. This is in Aphrodite. So I'm gonna be applying some of these as well. So like I said before, Lunar Beauty is Manny MUA's brand, so it's an influencer brand. It's one that we talk about a lot on Beauty News whenever he releases anything. So it sort of has been on my radar, but it hasn't. I'm not a huge Manny MUA fan, so I never really took the plunge to buy some of the products. But the brand did come to Glam Raider, which is an Australian stocker, so it's a lot easier to access now. And Glam Raider were nice enough to send Hayley and I a pack, and we just split it. So she's got a highlighter, she's got the Life's a Drag eyeshadow palette, I've got this eyeshadow palette. So if you're in Australia and you wanted to access Lunar Beauty, they do stock most of his range, which is really good, and they stock a heap of other stuff too. So I personally really love Glam Raider. So a big thank you to the crew at Glam Raider for sending this pack over for us to try. I'm really keen to see how much I like it. Last time they sent a really cool pack, it was the Colored Rain one, and the Safari Rain palette's like one of my favorite palettes ever. So I'm hoping this is also of that caliber. We'll see. All right, so this is the outer box. It is gold. It's got a snake on it. It is a Greek, like, goddess inspired. I think it's more like Greek mythology inspired palette. And this came out for holidays last year, but I think the palette stayed permanent. There was also a highlighter palette and I think lip glosses and whatnot. But this is the palette. I actually really like the packaging of this, and I remember when this launched and we were talking about it on Beauty News, and I said I really like this design. I think it's even nicer in person. I like the matte black with the gold sort of 3D effect. I think it's really cool. Looking at this really close as well, which I'll do a close-up, you can see the snakes have different designs on them and their eyes are red. I just think the detail of this is actually really impressive. All right, so opening it up, it does have a big mirror, which I like. A lot of people don't care about mirrors. I like them. I'm the kind of person that likes to put it right up close and do my makeup. And I find that these mirrors are quite handy. It does have a sticker over it at the moment, so it looks a little bit frosted, but it is a nice size, good quality mirror. So these are the 15 shades here. It's a mix of mattes. I love this mustard. I love that teal color. It's very, very pretty. So it looks like there's 8 mattes and 7 shimmers. So that's a nice split for a lot of people. This mustard, oh, you're killing me with it. So the reason I wanted to get back into eyeshadow reviews with this palette in particular is because these are the colors I have been using a lot lately. I think I had sort of color analysis paralysis recently, so I've gone back to using some palettes that have some basic warm browns, some basic nice cool tone brown shimmers. Like every day I could just see myself using this, blending it out with that, putting a little bit of that on the lash line and being done with it. So this is something that really inspires me right now. Is it sort of on trend with the bright colors and the greens and the duochromes and the multichromes? Probably not, but it is a sort of color story that actually is very, very flattering on most people. So I'm very keen to try this. So I'll talk more about these guys later on, but we'll now get on to swatching the palette and see how it applies on bare skin. So here are the shades close up. It's really hard to tell with a gold background. So that sort of doesn't look accurate when it's catching the light. So if I just tilt it, you'll see the colors a little bit more accurately. You've got some cool tone nudes, you've got some warm tone nudes, you got the pops of colors, but it's nothing super revolutionary, but I'm really keen to see how these apply and swatch. So we'll start with the top row, and the mattes are very, very buttery to pick up, which is quite nice. There's no kickback at the moment in the pan, but we'll see when I use a brush. So let's just go with the shades. That's a nice sort of skin colored color. It is actually pigmented, but it matches my skin really well. Here's that beautiful mustard matte. I love these colors. I think those colors are beautiful. We've got more of a copper shimmer, which is beautiful as well. These swatch really nicely. Last two shades. This one here, which is Aphrodite, was a little bit flaky to pick up, but it's a really nice burgundy matte, very pigmented, and a beautiful warm gold shimmer, which is here. All right, second row. This one is a little bit more cool toned, but similar sort of vibe. So we'll start with sort of like a rose gold copper, and that's got a lot of sparkle in it. So it's like a lot of micro sparkle. We've got a cool toned sort of nude. So that's a little bit more peachy and a little bit more pink than it is mustard. We have a cool toned bronze sort of nude. These are beautiful colors. I love those on just an everyday sort of look. That's very pigmented and beautiful. Okay, these two colors are gorgeous. By the way, that's a little bit of sparkle left over on my finger. That's not a wet finger. That dark brown, that reddy brown, and that teal look gorgeous together. I have to do a look with those two, but here we go. That is like a blackened base with a teal topper. So it's not actually super, super vibrant teal. It actually looks muted, and then it's like a flash of teal. That's a bit of a fun color. I'm really excited about that. Ooh, look at that one. Like a terracotta matte. It's a beautiful color. All right, last row, and we're seeing some more traditional colors. This is a beautiful burnt orange, little bit flaky, but nicely pigmented. We've got your more traditional highlight champagne color. I'm glad there's only one of these in the palette because I find too many becomes quite redundant. We've got another transition color. This is a little bit flaky as well, but nicely pigmented. This is more of a neutral shade. So we had a cool toned one before, a mustard one before that. This is more of your, like, I don't know, your cork brown sort of color. Last two shades are pretty basic shades as well. We've got a matte dark brown that is like, yeah, like a coffee dark chocolate brown. We've got a shimmery warm. That's a beautiful color. It's not something that I would personally use all over the lid, but it'd be beautiful for just smoking out a look, and it would go nice with all the other shimmers and mattes that we've seen before. So it's a dark brown shimmer with a little bit of like copper flash to it. It's quite pretty. All right, so I'm a little bit confused about where to start because I'm actually really inspired by this palette. I'm loving browns right now. I'm having a brown renaissance. So anything that's cool tone brown, warm tone brown, anything that complements browns, I'm all over it. So I might actually just start with the basics. I've gone for the bottom matte sort of transition color. This is like the more neutral one. And I'm just putting that just lightly in the crease. This is actually very pigmented. It blends very nicely, which is nice. So, okay, that was no effort at all. That's surprising. I've just picked up a little bit. It picks up really nicely on the brush. And you can just see that it has pigment and it blends nicely. Doesn't just stick to the base and like looks patchy. It's not patchy at all. I don't know if this is not bright enough. Let's have a look. There we go. So it's just a really, if there's any lumps and bumps, it is due to my lumpy skin. This actually blends very, very nicely. So that's a nice matte. All right, I've picked up the shade Iris, which is that sort of cool tone bronze, right in the middle of the palette. And I'm just going to apply that all over the lid. I really like applying this type of shadow with this type of brush. People like to complain that the brush I use is a fluffy brush. It's not. It's actually for cream products. It's sort of like a firm, it's got a flat side to it, but I really like it because it just picks up shimmers and applies them really nicely. It does sort of blending and packing at the same time, which I really appreciate. This is like a really perfect nude. There is a bit of fallout here, but I'll see if I can just swipe that away later. But this is the perfect, just like one color nude. I can see myself if I'm, going to see family and I don't really want to put much makeup on, just putting a wash of this, blending it out and being done with it. It's like a perfect nude color for me personally. So I really like this color, but there is fallout. There is definitely fallout. I think it actually looks a lot more flattering in person as well. For some reason, because of this lighting, which is not the best, sort of just looks a bit flat. In person, it's got a really nice rosy base to it and like a slight champagne shift. And the good thing is it just sort of flicks away. So far these colors flick away. We'll see how it goes with darker colors. All right, so that's my tutorial today, guys. And now I'm going to put some mascara on. No, I'm kidding. But you could definitely leave it here for a really basic look. On the same brush, I've just got on the very tip, you can see the shade Calypso, which is that dark shimmery brown. I just want to deepen the outer corner just very, very slightly, but I'm just going to start quite soft. I find when I do like a first look with a palette, I sort of start to just pull out a whole bunch of random colors and see how they work together. But I'll start to isolate the colors and the color stories a little bit more as I do more looks throughout the week. Okay, just with that original blending brush, I've got the shade Cleo, which is the cooler toned transition shade that looks a little bit more peachy. And I'm just blending all that out together. And you can definitely see that color. It looks like it's not very pigmented in the pan, or it's not going to show up because it's quite a light color, but it really does show up. And that's a really nice way to just sort of smoke up a basic look. Once again, you could just put a bit of liner on, put a bit of mascara, and you're done. Not today though. So I'm going to start with the mustard because I'm really interested in the mustard. I've just got a detailer brush. It's probably too small, but I'm going to put some mustard on in the inner part of my lower lash line, that matte mustard. I love this color. It's so pretty. I really like the contrast with the nudes and a pop of mustard, but now I'm going in with Artemis, which is that burnt orange down the bottom, just on the same brush. And I'm just running that on the lower lash line on the outer half. So we're making a pretty big contrast with the cool tone nudes and a bit of warmth underneath. Once again, this applies quite nicely. I do think some of the fallout from the dark shade didn't flick off completely. It's looking a little bit dark just down here, but it's not a big deal. Those colors transition really nicely together. They set off the colors above them really nicely, but they don't clash. I like these combos. From the top row, I'm grabbing a shimmer just to pop in here. This is actually Hera, which I actually wish there was a lighter gold because I sort of want a bright sort of color in there, but I don't want the champagne. So I think this might actually ruin the look a little bit. Stop, stop, stop. I'll just do it very lightly. I think this is sort of probably too orangey for... I sort of wanted a gold pop in the inner corner, but there's no gold pops here. So yeah, I didn't like that element. Undo, undo. Let's put some more mustard. Undo, undo, undo. All right, I'm going to go off and do some liner and mascara. I don't think I'll do lashes today, but this so far has applied really nicely. The mattes apply really nicely. They blend really nicely. They have a nice amount of pigment. The shimmers applied nicely. I didn't need to foil them. I didn't need to apply them with my finger to show up. They just applied really, really nicely and evenly, which was nice. They all sort of blend nicely together without muddying together. Some eyeshadows, you blend them together and they just end up looking like one color. These, you can see the distinct colors, but they blend and transition really nicely together. I'm actually really impressed. I'm getting vibes that this reminds me of the formula of Coloured Rain. I love Coloured Rain eyeshadow formula. It might be too soon to say this after using this palette only once, but it gives me those kind of vibes. All right, so this is a look with some mascara and liner. All I did was use Benefit Roller Lash in black. I used Benefit Roller Lash eyeliner in brown for my wing, and I used the Rimmel Scandalized Kohl Kajal pencil in brown on my waterline, and I love this look. I was looking at it and I'm like, this is exactly what I've been going for lately, just sort of nude but brown but warm but wearable, sort of classic but flattering. I love this look. I just keep looking at myself in the mirror and going, yeah, this is exactly sort of what I'm vibing lately, whether it's cool toned, whether it's warm toned. Normally what I'll do is I'll top this off with a bit of a champagne sort of like nude highlighter and maybe a nude glossy lip, and off I go. That's sort of the style that I've been doing a lot lately, but we're not going to do that. We're going to look at some of the highlighters, which is not really part of this review, but at the same time, I thought we'll go there anyway. So these are the Moon Prism powders. So they've got the crescent moon, and then you open it up like this. Then you slide out the little compact, and this is the highlighter itself. It's very, very pretty. It looks like a crystal. And if you open it up, there's the highlighter in there. So I have swatched this. I haven't used this yet. This is like a peachy sort of cool tone shade called Mars. I also have another one. There's actually 4 shades in total, but I've got 2 of them here. This is the other one in Mercury, and it is more of your white highlighter that's got like a gold sort of yellow shift to it. So that's what they're like swatched. They're very pigmented, and they remind me a lot of maybe Becca highlighters. They sort of feel a little bit, you know when people talk about eyeshadows being pigmented and buttery, so they you can feel that they've got a little bit of like dimethicone or oiliness to them. They're not a very dry, powdery formula. That's what this feels like. And it reminds me a lot of Becca highlighters. Becca highlighters tend to have that sort of feel to them where they're quite moist, but quite pigmented. But downside of those is I find that they sometimes look like they're sitting on top of the skin rather than sort of looking like it's part of the skin. But I want to try Mars today. I do think these compacts are very, very beautiful. I love the sort of translucent, sort of iridescentness to it. I think they're fun. They've got a little mirror in there as well. So I'm just going to peel off the sticker to that. I'm just using my Real Technique setting brush just for the highlighter. I really like this for highlighter. Picks up a lot. I feel like this is going to be pretty bold, but I feel like that's Manny's style. Not really my style, Manny, but you know, we're different, so that's fine. That's okay, that's quite intense. So I thought I only put a little bit on, but clearly not. All right, with a clean side, I am going to just blend that in a little bit, because even though this does seem like one of those highlighters that people put on, they're like, oh my God, which is what I think Manny's going for. Me personally, I'm 33. My skin doesn't like heaps of highlighter. It just doesn't look very flattering. And I like my highlighter to be blended a little bit more. So this is probably a little bit extreme for what I like, but I understand that it is pretty. And for something that is quite pigmented, I think it also does look fairly flattering. So you can see a little bit of skin texture, but nothing too crazy. So yeah, what I do like about this highlighter is I really like the sort of peachy base with the wet look, like the cool toned wet sheen. The last highlighter that I saw that did something similar, but maybe a little bit more subtle, was the Berlin Girl Glow from Becca. That one had more of a beige base and a cool tone shift, and that was really, really pretty. This is a similar concept, but it's a little bit more bold. So I prefer the Becca one because it's a little bit more subtle and you can build it up. This one, I feel like you put it on, it's quite intense and you have to sort of blend it out to make it a little bit more subtle. So I think this is designed to be more of a in-your-face highlighter, which I understand it's sort of like still trendy to do that, and that's Manny's style, so of course that's what he'd want to create. I do think it's very pretty. I think it's a little bit cool tone for me personally and what I like right now, but it's very pretty and quite easy to apply. So I do like this. I do feel like the white one will be a little bit too frosty for me. So I might pass this on to someone who has a much fairer skin tone and likes a brighter highlighter. But the moment of truth is the lip product. I'm very fussy about my lip products, so I'm really keen to try this. So this is a liquid lipstick in Aphrodite. It's got beautiful packaging. This is the holiday packaging. So I think his permanent range doesn't have the gold. I think it's got a different color, but not the gold. It's got a crystal in the lid, which I'll zoom in and show you soon. And you can see the color. It's a beautiful red down the bottom. So that's a liquid lipstick. It is a very pretty liquid lipstick. So hopefully you can see it zoomed in. Hopefully you can see the crystal at the top in the lid. So there's a nice detail there. Oh, it smells really good. So it's one of those strong sort of cupcake scented products, which I don't hate. It just makes me want to eat it. But it's a beautiful red. I love these reds. I think they go nicely with these nude looks. I get it. I dig it. It's quite thin, which is nice. This point, so that's got a tilt and it goes to like a bit of a point. It's quite easy to like apply a large amount and then also sort of tilt it and move it to sort of get more detail. Smells so good. Smells so good. All right, so I love that color. I'm just letting it dry for a second so I don't smear it all over my teeth. All right, that looks fantastic. That was easy to apply. It smells really nice. It's very opaque with one layer. I don't need to build it up. It's well behaved. All right, so what I'll do tomorrow when I do my eye look checking in, I'll let you know how this is worn, because so far on first impressions, it's very pleasant to use. It looks really beautiful. On camera, it probably looks like a true red. I think in real life, it's slightly more cool toned. So it's a little bit more raspberry red than it is orange red, but I'd almost say it's like a bright, true, neutral red, slightly erring on the side of cool tone. So it'd make your teeth look really nice and white. I think it's a very pretty lipstick. All right, so this is look number 2 for the Lunar Beauty palette. I wanted to go something a little bit different. I really wanted to play with the sort of teal color layered over a warm color, because swatching it yesterday, I noticed that the teal is not like just a straight up teal. It's sort of like a blackened color, that like a blackened brown or something, that's got a sort of teal shift to it. So I thought it might be fun layering it over other products. And when I did swatch these two colors together, I was like, that combo looks divine. So I sort of played with that a little bit today. Now, when I originally swatched that, I was thinking of maybe putting this on the top lash line and that on the bottom. So I might still play with that color combination, maybe with these two. So they're more distinctly different. So you can see the teal a little bit more boldly on its own, but today I laid it. So I did a few things today. I set my base with this shade. I put that in the crease originally. It was a little bit too mustard for what I was going for, so I then layered that over the top. I originally put that all over my top lash line, which was fine. I put the shimmery orange color on my lower lash line, which applied nicely. There was actually no fallout today. Maybe it was just the technique that I was using a bit more. And then I went to layer this over the matte. It didn't look as fantastic as I was expecting. Like, it didn't stick as well. So I did put a little bit of this shade just on the middle of my lid, popped a bit more of that on with my finger. And then when I sort of wanted a little bit more depth to the look, it sounds very complicated, I know, but I ended up putting a little bit of this red color in the outer corner and the outer corner of my lower lash line. So a lot going on. Oh, and then as a inner corner highlight, I put this color here that I put all over the lid yesterday. So yeah, I used a fair bit of the palette today, but I was just trying to sort of create an effect that I was after, that I wasn't sort of getting from one or two colors. So yeah, I used this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, that one, and that one, I think that's all I used. That's all I used. So I do think this is a pretty striking look. I really like the color combo. I do think the teal over the sort of warm shades, it's a nice combination. They don't clash. Even though it took a bit to build up with my finger, I think it looks really effective for like a sort of bold look. I was even thinking that I could make this even more bold and probably make it look a little bit more interesting if I laid it over something like this color and like these colors. But that was a little bit too dark for what I was sort of going for. So hopefully you can see close up that it is a very warm eye. There's a lot of orange. That was the base. I sort of diffused it out with a few colors. I just deepened the outer corner with that red, and then I really wanted to pop that teal over the top. I think it does layer really nicely over the warm shades, which is fantastic. I think it makes my eyes pop. It's quite probably darker than I expected, but I think it's a really nice look. And then I just popped that nude shimmer in the inner corner just for a bit of sort of vibrancy and lightness there, because it was getting a little bit dark. I could have used the champagne, but I felt like that was too bright for this look. I still wanted to keep it sort of smoky and muted, but I wanted a little bit of brightness, and that nude worked really well. But yeah, they all applied fine, no fallout. I did want to update you on this liquid lipstick from yesterday. So what happened was I was wearing it all day. It actually looked really stunning all day. After I filmed, I did have something to eat. I did have a coffee, and I found that this is not one of those really budge proof, dry, really set liquid lipsticks, which is good because it means it's more comfortable. But I did find that after it sort of hit the coffee and the food and it started like degrading a little bit, there was a little bit of smudginess. I think I somehow touched my mouth and there was a little bit of like smudging, but I fixed that up pretty easily. And then I just sort of corrected it with a lip liner, and then it lasted all day really comfortably. It looked perfect until I took it off at night pretty much. I then ate dinner. and I had like garlic bread and stuff, and it just wore away a tiny bit on the inner corner, but it was very comfortable to wear all day. And with a little bit of a touch up just after my sort of lunchtime meal and coffee, this actually looked really gorgeous. So I'm going to keep trying this throughout the week, and probably at the very end of this video I'll sort of give a more solid conclusion of this as well. So I think this is a really pretty look, quite bold, but quite striking. All right, so I'm back for look number 3, and I've gone a really basic look because I'm just editing today, and normally I wouldn't be wearing makeup, but I thought, no, I'm gonna try a sort of nude look with this palette. So one update from yesterday that I wanted to mention was that the teal color did sort of transfer a little bit on my sort of this area. What's this area? Above my crease. So because I did pat it on with my finger, and I do have hooded eyes, there'll be a photo on the screen. We can just see that it transferred a little bit above the crease, but it, you know, that was the only sort of notable thing. Also, I filmed yesterday a beauty news episode, and from far back you could really see the mustard in the crease, whereas I feel like close up it wasn't that noticeable, but like far away it was for some reason. So even though I really do like this mustard color here, I feel like I don't love it for the crease because it just seems to be quite prominent from afar. So for me, this would be more of, you know, an all over lid color. I might even do an all over mustard color. I kind of like those. I should have done that today, damn it. But what I did do today was just use 2 colors. So I used this color on no primer. I've got no primer on my eyes. I just put it on a fluffy brush, and then I just put it on the lid, on the lower lash line, and I wanted to hit up this shimmery shade as well down here, and I just put that in the inner corner, sort of diffused a bit, because even though that's a nice color to have in this palette because it's a neutral highlight shade, so it doesn't lean too yellow, it doesn't lean too sort of cool tone silvery, it's like a beige, but it is very light, and it's not sort of, it's quite bold. It's a bold, you know, highlight shade. So I just sort of blended it out quite a lot in the inner corner. So that's all I did. I put a nude liner on my waterline, some mascara, and it applied really easily. The whole look was, I was surprised at how nicely this applied and blended it out, and how well it sort of stuck to the eye, even though I was wearing no primer. So this is the quick close-up, so you can just see that I used that nude all over the eye, and you can see that highlight shade which catches the light differently as you sort of move. All right, we're back with look number 4, and today is more of a smoky sort of red. I think it's a little bit sunsetty. You'll see more when I zoom in. But I have discovered a few things about this palette that I'm not loving so much. So when I made the claim when I first applied this saying, oh, it reminds me a lot of the Coloured Rain eyeshadow formula, there are 2 things that have sort of knocked this down a lot. And I'm going to explain them very quickly. So what I wanted to do today was mainly use this shade here. It's sort of like a rose gold, I don't know, bronzy sort of color, a little bit cranberry rose gold. I thought this would be really nice all over the lid, and then just blend it out with a bit of orange and put a little bit of this deep color just near the lash line to sort of intensify it. And it actually went a lot more bold than I expected to, but that was because I really struggled with this shade. I'm not sure if you can see, but it's sort of sealed over a little bit. So it didn't pick up super well on the brush and then apply on the eye. So that happens with some eyeshadows, and I find metallics that have a lot of like dimethicone oiliness sort of feel to them. Sometimes you can pick them up really nicely on the brush, sometimes you can pick them up really nicely on your finger, but they don't then stick to your set base. It's like they just repel your base. So when you try to apply it, you're like, I've got all this product on my finger or on my brush, why isn't it sticking to my eye? And that's what this one did. So I ended up having to go in with my finger, swirl my finger around, apply it on, which made the look a lot more bold than I was intending. I wanted this to be like a wash of this sort of cranberry rose gold color, but instead I had to sort of like pack it on, and because you use your finger, which, you know, isn't very precise, I had to sort of blow it out a lot to sort of, I don't know, make it look okay. So yeah, so this shade was a bit of a hassle. When you swatch it, it looks beautiful. Even when I removed the product from my finger that I had been using to pack on my eye, I just sort of wiped on the back of my hand, and there was like so much pigment there, it just wouldn't apply to the eye. So I have had that with quite a few eyeshadow formulas in the past. It's not an uncommon thing, but it is a frustrating thing, and it makes those sort of shades a lot less easier to wear, and I'm less inclined to reach for them because I see them as being difficult shades to apply. I did pick this up with a very small detail brush later on and applied a little bit after I'd blended a lot out, and it applied a lot better, but yeah, it just didn't want to apply properly originally to the base. Once it was on, it sort of was happy to stick to itself, but yeah, to the base it didn't like it. So that shade was a little bit difficult, but it is a pretty shade, and I think in the future I'd mainly use this just on a firm sort of like pencil brush, just to really work it in smaller areas, because it just doesn't want to apply smoothly over large areas. So yeah, that one I didn't love, but I did apply that all over the lid. I did put that in the crease. Then what I wanted to do was sort of work in some of these warm tones. So I originally applied that in the crease and on the lower lash line, but then I deepened it with this shade here, this sort of berry matte color. And the mattes applied really beautifully. I do think the mattes are the best part of this palette. And that and the orange sort of blended together a lot to make this sort of sunsetty smoky look that I'll show you in a second. Then I put some black liner. The black liner looked a little bit too bold, so I went in with this shade here and I just blended it in a little bit, smoked out the line. And as a highlighter, I used this sort of bronzy gold shade. So you can see that on the inner corner, it just adds more of a warm pop to the look. So that's what I used. I used a lot of shades, but I wanted to talk about another issue that I have with this palette, and it's a weird one, and I can't really identify what it is, but I needed to verbalize it anyway. So one thing I noticed the other day, I think it was on day 2 or maybe even day 1, I noticed that my eye was getting a little bit irritated. And what I mean by irritated is it felt like there was something like tickling in my eye, and I didn't know what it was. Now, I've got cats. They're there. They're sleeping on the couch. So sometimes, and also it's winter, so I'm wearing a lot of fluffy things. There's a lot of fluff going around, a lot of blankets. So sometimes I find that on a brush or something, I might have like a loose little bit of fluff. And sometimes if you're applying it to your eye, or you've got fluff in your eyelash or something, and you feel like sometimes it might tickle your eye and irritate your eye a little bit, and you go, oh, it's okay, there's a bit of fluff, and you pick that off and you like, be on your way, fluff. So that sometimes happens, and that's what I thought happened to me the other day, so I didn't mention it. But today when I was applying the eyeshadows, and not every eyeshadow, but the majority of the eyeshadows, I noticed that when I was applying them to my eye started feeling that tickly, irritated feel. Now, other things that sort of cause that feel, and hopefully you can understand what I'm talking about, but sometimes if you've got like loose powder and you apply a lot of loose powder and a little bit gets in your eye, and it just sort of like irritates your eye a little bit, but it doesn't hurt your eye, you just feel like there's something in your eye. Or sometimes if you've got skincare or body care that's got menthol and it gets near your eye and your eye gets a little bit like tingly, or you apply skincare that has a lot of alcohol and your eyes get a little bit like sensitive, that's the sort of tingle that I'm talking about. And I'm getting them from the eyeshadows, which is very unusual. And so I sort of dismissed it the other day because it happened once and I thought it might have been something else in my eye, irritating my eye, but it's the eyeshadows. So I don't know if there's some chemical in the eyeshadows that's irritating my eyes, or if it's a fine mist of powder that's going into my eyes when I apply the eyeshadow, because they are quite soft, so that could be the case as well. So I'm not too sure what it is, and I've never experienced it before ever, but I can confirm there is something about these eyeshadows that are irritating my eyes when I'm applying them. Now, the irritation doesn't cause any redness. Once the eyeshadow's on, it's gone, so I can't feel that my eyes are irritated now. They don't look bloodshot, they don't look irritated. But it is just a weird sensation that there's either a chemical in here, that the like vapors are irritating my eyes, or there's a fine amount of powder that's going into my eyes and sort of tingling my eyes. There is something about this that I don't love using. So the look is quite pretty. It blended really nicely. All the mattes blended really well together. You can't really just see the distinguishing difference between the wine matte and the orange because I sort of use them together. You can see on the lower lash line, it's just a mix of those two. I've got that sort of cranberry shimmer color all over the lid and that pop of bronzy, sort of warm bronze on the inner corner. And then I blended out my liner with that dark matte brown. So it is a pretty look. It's a lot more bold than I was expecting. I'm just going to the shops today, so watch out, Costco. I'm coming in bold. All right, we are back, and I'm not sure what day this is because I took about a 4-day break. So I think this might be look number 5. So I did take a bit of a break, and now I'm back just to wear a 1 shade look. So I did mention that this sort of mustard shade, it sort of looks quite yellow in the crease, and so I wanted to try it all over the lid, and I did. And I love this look. I think this is probably one of my favorite looks I've created from this palette. Hands down, it's like the most perfect mustard where you can work it with other colors, but on its own, it's so flattering. I really like this. It might not be super flattering on camera, I don't know, but in real life, this sort of, it looks wearable, it looks sort of fall inspired, it looks simple, but like sort of modern, and I really like it. And what I also really like about this, even though it is definitely a mustard shade, it's definitely more yellowy. It reminds me a lot when I did a look using my Melt Gemini palette and I used the Mochi shade, which is like a sort of murky chartreuse color, and I did a similar sort of look. Now, if you watched my videos last week, you will know that RIP Melt Gemini palette, it went a sort of moldy, or something was growing on it, or something was reacting, and it's gone now. I'm not going to use it. So I have been looking for sort of replacements for that. And I think this eye look, even though it's not as green toned as that Mochi shade, it gives a very, very similar effect. So I really like this. Yeah, it's really interesting. So it applied really easily. There was no tingling or sensation on my eyes. So this matte definitely doesn't do that, which is great. So this is a look that I definitely would recreate in the future. I think it's very, very simple. I just packed a bit on my eyes. I didn't try to build it up too much. I just used sort of like a packing brush, ran it underneath my lash line, and then I just used a fluffy brush to blend it out with the same shade. So I'll zoom in so you can see this look. So yeah, this is a pretty simple look, but I think it's very effective. You can see that it blended quite nicely. It packed on well enough. It was easy to use. I just used a simple primer and a bit of mascara, and that's it. All right, another day, another Lunar Beauty look, and I wanted to go for that sort of smoky brown, hitting up the browns. I'm loving browns at the moment, and I like sort of pairing them with a brighter or a statement lip. So this is sort of exactly what I've been doing a lot. So the shades that I used are, so I set my base with a cream. I then used this shade. So this is more of the warmer transition color. It's more like caramel brown, whereas this is more of a sort of pinky, peachy sort of transition. So I used this one in the crease, which was quite pigmented and actually took over the look very quickly. I was like, oh wow, that's actually very pigmented. Then I used this shade here, just all over the lid. That's where it started to eye tingle a little bit. Sort of feels like there's a little dusting of powder that gets in my eyes. That's what it feels like. So that's what happened with this one. There's a bit of fallout as well, but it's a nice sort of warm bronze shade that I put all over the lid. I put this shimmer shade, this dark shimmer shade, on the outer half and blended it out. I did the same on my lower lash line. So this and this just sort of blended together. That also had a bit of fallout, and that also tingled my eyes a little bit. So I feel like the issue here is the shimmers. Then I went in with a little bit of this color just to sort of put in the outer corner and to sort of smoke it out. Then I went back with this shade just to sort of blend the bottom line and to sort of all blend it out. So I've hit up a lot of the browns, bam, 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 to create this sort of smoky brown look. I really like the effect of it. I do feel like this bronze is a little bit warmer than I sort of wanted. It's quite orangey. I would like something a little bit more neutral bronze in this palette, just for like an everyday thing, but it is still a very pretty look. So hopefully you can see it's just a nice sort of basic warm brown look with shimmer and matte. They blended very nicely. The shimmer, similar to that sort of rose gold one the other day, it did take a little bit of work to get it onto the brush and then onto the eye, but it just meant that I had to sort of pack it on the brush quite heavily and apply it to the eye, which meant there was a little bit of fallout. but I just flicked it away. As long as I can flick away the fallout, it doesn't bother me too much. So I really like these colors. I think these browns are really, really beautiful. They suit brown eyes. They would, you know, suit blue eyes. They would suit green eyes. I think they're very, very pretty. They create a really nice smoky look. I just paired it with some liner. So I just used a brown liquid liner and some mascara. And I think, yeah, it was simple to do. They all worked nicely. They all blended well and they all had nice pigment. It's just a little bit of that eye tingly, a little bit of the fallout. That was the only issue, but I really like this look. So I do think I've used all the shades by now and I've got an idea of what I think about the palette, but I do want to just double check all the looks that I created because I sort of dragged this over a week and a half, so I don't remember. So I want to go back and make sure I haven't missed any of the shades, and also probably do one more look with the teal being a little bit more vibrant or noticeable in the look, because I just used it tapped on the lid, I think on day 2. So I will recoup and make sure I've used everything and then be back with one more look and my conclusion of the palette. All right, so this is the last look I decided to create using the palette, and I mainly wanted to do another look so I can really hone in and try to use more of that blue teal color, because when I first used it, I laid it over an orange shade, so use this, laid it over that, and it didn't really show how it shines on its own. So I really wanted to give it a go. Now, you might be looking at my eyes and going, you're not wearing any blue. That's because it's actually not like a really solid blue. So if you swatch it and you look at it and go, oh, it's got a beautiful blue reflect, but when you actually sort of blend it on, it's actually got like a purpley, I don't know, like a purpley taupe sort of nude base. So what I actually tried to do today was, what I wanted to do in my head was have like on my lid sort of nude color, and I wanted to hit up these 2 colors again. So I put that in the crease, set my base with that, put that in the crease, put that all over the lid. Then I wanted to put this on the lower lash line and really like make a vibrant teal lower lash line. It just wouldn't apply. I think you need to apply it wet, or you need to apply it over glitter glue. I didn't have time for that. I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to test on its own, and there's barely any color there. So that was annoying. So to amp up the look a little bit more, I put more in the outer corner. I'll zoom in and show it to you. Didn't really do much. So I then put that color there just in the crease a little bit to deepen it. So we'll zoom in. I'll show you the look. So hopefully you can see that on the lid, I've got that sort of nude color, that shimmer. I've got a bit of that sort of berry matte in the crease that makes it look like a nice diffused purple. I think they're really nice together. I think it's a nice sort of cool toned nude look. Yeah, it looks kind of rosy, which is pretty. On the lower lash line, it kind of looks gray because I put that nude shimmer on the lower lash line, and then on the outer corner, I tried to pack on the sort of teal color. It just turned into sort of like a steel gray sort of color. Same as the outer corner, you can see it just looks cool toned. That's the teal sort of business going on. If I wanted to pack it on, I could use my fingers, I could use it wet. I didn't want to do that, so there's not much teal going on. The only blue you can see in my look is from my waterline, because I popped like a navy sort of liner in my waterline, but the rest of it looks kind of nude and cool toned. So I do think that the teal sort of makes things a little bit cooler toned, but it doesn't really give a real punch of color on its own. All right, so now that I've done X amount of looks, I can conclude what I think about this palette. So overall, I think it's a pretty solid palette. So the colors all work really nicely together. The mattes particularly I like the most. I think they apply really nicely. They have a nice amount of pigment. They blend nicely. There's not too much fallout with the mattes. I think the mattes are the best in this palette, or the formula is the best in my opinion. The shimmers are a bit of hit and miss. So for example, most shimmers are all right. So this one applies nicely. The highlight shade applies nicely. This one applies nicely. This one sealed up a little bit and took a little bit of effort to put on. And the problem is, the more you pick up on your brush, the more fallout there's going to be. With fallout, you can just sort of flick it away with a soft brush, like a clean brush, so like a big sort of fluffy brush. So I didn't mind the fallout too much, but if you really don't like fallout, the shimmers, they'll have a bit of fallout. It is what it is. This shade is quite disappointing because it looks like a pop of color, like it looks like something a little bit different in the palette, but in reality, it's just an unusual sort of cool toned browny purpley nude with an like teal sort of aqua shift to it. So you can play that up, but in reality, if you're just using it on a normal eyeshadow base with the normal brushes, it's going to be hard to really get the color showing up. And when I did use this in my second look, where I used the orange base and then put that on the top, you could definitely see it, but that was packed on with my finger. I really had to sort of pack it on, and I think you could see it more because it was a nice contrast to the orange. So I think this adds a nice element of contrast to the colors in this palette, but I don't think on its own it's that impressive, if that makes sense. So really only the issues with the formula for me would be a bit of fallout with the shimmers, and also the sort of sealing up with some shimmers. It takes a little bit to sort of, or you probably need your finger to apply it to get like a bold look. So that one and that one need your fingers to, you know, make it show up pretty well. But my biggest issue with the shimmers is the fact that it sort of tends to irritate my eyes. There's something about them that just tingle my eyes. It feels like there's a little dusting of powder that goes in my eyes, or there's a little vapor or something that sort of tingles my eyes. Now, that wouldn't stop me from using this palette because it's sort of, once you've done your eyeshadow and once you've sort of blinked it away, it's gone. But it is uncomfortable, and it is something that will possibly stop me from buying more palettes from Lunar Beauty in the future, when I know that my eyes aren't particularly sensitive. I've got a lot of eyeshadow palettes in my collection. None have done that to me before. So there is something about this formula or the shimmer formula in this that irritates my eyes. So like I said, it's not an ongoing thing that throughout the day my eyes are red and irritated. It's just when you're putting it on, it must be the microfine particles getting in my eye that you would get, you know, you're putting powder on your eye. Of course, you're going to get some powder in your eye, but there's something about this formula that just I can feel on my eyes, which I don't like. So yeah, it won't stop me from using this palette, but it will probably stop me from buying more Lunar Beauty in the future, unless they change their formula and they've addressed it, which I don't think they will. And I haven't heard too many people say that, so maybe it's just like, maybe I'm one of the minority. So it's not a huge problem, but it's something to note. And if you've got sensitive eyes, I'd probably avoid this formula. But the other thing I want to say about this, like, I think the shades are really smart. And if you like warm nudes or warm eyeshadows or sort of basic looks, you'll probably really like this palette. Like, I really love the mustard and the mustard all over the lid. That I'm going to reach for this palette to recreate that because I really like the look. I also really liked some of the sort of cooler tone browns down here. Like I said, the mattes were probably the best in this. They applied so well and they were just so easy to use. I liked the oranges. I think they looked really pretty. And for a palette this big, I think it was quite smart that there aren't too many redundancies. I think the only one is probably this orange and that orange. They end up looking quite similar on the eye and you don't need them both. And I really would have loved to have seen either a lighter gold in here as a highlight shade, because if you go like warm all over the lid, you end up having to go something quite cool to put a little pop on the inner corner if you want a bit of vibrancy. So I would have liked a soft sort of more champagne gold highlight shade to work a bit better with these. It would have looked really pretty with the teal. So, you know, I do think they could have got rid of one of these shades and put in a different color, but for a palette this big, having not too many redundancies, I thought it was really well done. And I totally liked the color story. Everything, like I said, worked really well. You could do cool looks, you can do really warm looks, you can do orange looks, you can do rosy looks. This was surprisingly a cool tone rosy look that I didn't think I'd be able to achieve from this palette, but you can. So I do like this palette. I will reach for it, but don't be deceived by the pop of color. If you like the colors when you take that out, that's what this palette is. This is just something that piques interest. It doesn't actually deliver, and it is a bit of a letdown. If you wanted a really punchy, shimmery teal color, it's not in this palette. It's a weird one. It's probably more wearable color. So I think a lot of people who like this color story will actually get a bit of use out of that. But if you like color, it doesn't do it for me. So yeah, I think overall it's a solid palette. I'm actually quite impressed. I think if it wasn't for the fact that I might be sensitive to one of the ingredients in this, it would be on my radar because the quality is quite nice. Like I said, there's a couple of issues with it, but only minor and you can work around it. So I think if it wasn't for the sensitivity issues, Lunar Beauty palettes would definitely be something that's on my radar. But right now I'm just happy to use this one because it's a nice color story. Quick update for these guys. I do want to say that I had to fish this out of my handbag, which implies I really like it, or at least I like it enough to use it and bring it out with me. I did do a video, I think it was my empties, where I was wearing this and a lot of people are like, oh my God, that's the most amazing red. It's a really, really beautiful color. It's really vibrant. I do recommend using a lip liner with it, not because it needs it, because you can't apply it evenly, but I do feel like after you've eaten, it can smear a little bit. The way I used this over the weekend was I actually put a normal red lipstick on and I just popped this in the middle just to add a bit more vibrancy because the color is really, really beautiful, and I touched up with it and it was really easy. So this is a really kick-ass red liquid lipstick, but because it's not one of those sucking your lips dry liquid lipsticks, it can move around a little bit. So you do have to just make sure that if you're eating with it or even drinking with it, just check your lips that it's not transferring anywhere. But it's a very, very pretty liquid lipstick, and it's quite comfortable as well for a matte liquid lipstick. So I really like that. With the highlighter, I like it. It's not my favorite color, and it's not my favorite formula, but it is definitely pretty. And if you love a peachy sort of cool tone, so it's a peachy undertone, but it's got a kind of cool shift to it. If you really like the idea of a cool peachy sort of highlight, you'll really like this. It's not really what I'm going for right now, but the formula is quite nice. It's quite bold. For me, I want to sheer it out, but it is a pretty product. I thought I'd just swatch it as a reminder. So peach base with a cool shift. It's very pretty. It's quite unique. I would just like it a little bit more softer for my aging skin, but it's very pretty, and the packaging is gorgeous. Really like it. So I'm actually overall quite impressed with the Lunar Beauty products that I've tried. Like I said, they're definitely on my radar for something else to look at. I'm just a little bit concerned about the eyeshadows sort of reacting to my eyes a little bit. All right, guys, so that is done. It was a long one, but I'd love to know what you think of Lunar Beauty if you've tried them, or what your impression of this palette is from my review. I'm curious. I'll have another review coming soon. I've got Anastasia Beverly Hills, Alyssa Edwards palette that I haven't touched yet. So that's one that I want to review very soon. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.